This is a model I would love to see Gibson bring back. What's up everyone, I'm Jack Fossett. Welcome to the channel and thank you for tuning in to this demo and review of this out of production guitar. This is the Gibson ES-137 Classic. This is an awesome guitar. I get why they canceled it. It wasn't the best-selling guitar out there. It wasn't really particularly that popular, but it's totally awesome and it really fit in this perfect little niche in the Gibson catalog. Now this is a special guitar for me. This is actually the first specific model electric guitar I ever wanted. When I started playing, initially I liked the idea of a Stratocaster, but I pretty quickly got enamored with hollow body guitars. I loved the idea of an electric guitar with an F-hole, and I also love the color blue. So the first thing I searched was blue hollow body guitar, and this is what happened to pop up. Kind of vindicating that, I don't know if vindicating is the right word, but it's really cool for me that the first electric guitar that I ever wanted is just a totally awesome model, and I mean, I had no idea. Well, I just liked that it was a blue hollow body guitar. Now this is actually the second one that I've owned. I did briefly own one about 13 years ago that I unfortunately wasn't able to keep due to financial reasons, but I've had my eye on one ever since to get again, you know, not just because it's the first guitar I ever wanted, but because it's really awesome. Now this was a graduation of a guitar that preceded it called the Gibson ES-135. Now the 135 was a little bit different in some ways. They were kind of going for a modern vintage archtop, and that one had a trapeze tailpiece. It originally had P100s, which were Gibson's noiseless P90s. It didn't have any inlays in the fingerboard. It didn't have neck binding, as far as I know. And also, it was interesting, it had a balsa wood center block, and the idea was to give it a center block that would limit feedback, but be a little bit lighter and then lend to kind of halfway between semi-hollow and hollow in sort of a weird way. Now later on, they would change the 135, and eventually it became more like what the 137 is. There would be models with humbuckers. They would have ones that had the mahogany center block like this one, and also a stop bar tailpiece. There was even a short-lived one that didn't have F-holes. The 135 is kind of a story in and of itself. Eventually in the early 2000s, I think it was the early 2000s, it changed to the 137, or the 137 came out as an upgraded version of it that had fancier inlays in the neck. It had neck binding, and there was also the 137 Custom, which I would still love to get. It's a really cool guitar. That one had the Gibson Custom inlays, including the split diamond headstock and a Veritone switch. Now, again, these weren't really the most popular, but they were used by Jet, Kings of Leon, Chris Daughtry, and a number of others. And the interesting thing is the idea of this one, as opposed to the 135 was kind of like a modern vintage archtop. The 137, the idea that I've seen put forward about it is that it was supposed to be like a big ES Les Paul. That was more the idea. It was more like a power guitar. But what I get from it vibe-wise is more like it's halfway between a 335 and a 175. It actually gives me more soulful, jazzy vibes. And not that it can't handle rock, I mean, it absolutely does beautifully. But it would be, again, kind of like halfway between a 335 and a 175. It's got the mahogany center block, but it's a thicker body than the 335, thinner body than the 175. It's got the beautiful Florentine cut. Now, when it was available, this was very reasonable money. It actually cost a little less than many Les Paul models. The interesting thing about it is this is totally speculation on my point. One of the things that you notice about them is that many of the finishes were pretty inconsistent. They didn't look great. Even this one, and I love this blue finish, but this one is like it's very dark. So, you know, you're seeing it with the studio lights right on it. Sometimes if I hang it up on the wall and there aren't lights on it, you really can't tell the difference between this and a black guitar. Some of the cherry sunburst ones, they kind of had the like blotchy tomato soup ring around the edges. Some of them looked great. I almost wondered if Gibson used them for people who were their employees who weren't as experienced to kind of get into finishing and learn about finishing. Not like an internship, but, you know, like the lower level, the less experienced employees would have a chance to work on these before they moved up to a Les Paul or a 335. Total speculation. It's just something that I've noticed that was one thing that stood out. You know, even like the decal headstocks were often off center, things like that. And because it was a lesser desired model, I wonder if that was kind of like a stepping stone for people working on those things. Who knows? All in all, it was an awesome guitar. It had cool vintage styling, but was off the beaten path enough that it wasn't just the same old guitar that everyone else was playing. It filled a niche beautifully. I would love to see this guitar make a comeback, even if it had some slightly different appointments. Now, this particular one has the Gibson 490R and 498T Alnico humbuckers. I think those sound awesome. They're pickups that I've always thought were underrated. They were like stock models for a long time. They just sound great. I think they sound as good as anything Gibson has made in the modern era. Now, today I'm playing into a Marshall JVM, and I'm actually using the new Keeley Super Bass pedal for my overdriven tones. It just sounds great. I love this guitar. I'm really excited to have it back in my collection. Please let us know what you think. What do you think of the 135, the 137? Do you own either of these guitars, or is it one that you've had your eye on? If you're interested in any of the gear from this review, please shop through the links below, including you can find 137s particularly used on like Guitar Center and things. That's where I got this one, was through Guitar Center used. I traded in some gear and managed to get my hands on this one. So you still see them kicking around for pretty reasonable prices. So check them out through the links below. Stick around. I'm going to play the neck, middle, and bridge settings, both clean and overdriven, to give you a full tonal profile of what the guitar sounds like. I'm Jack Fossett. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the video.